Hello there, people of the internet. Not too terribly long ago, I ended up making a poll where I asked people, hey, by some hypothetical magic situation, you were thrown back in time into the trenches of World War I, and you have yourself a modern loadout. What modern firearm would you take into the trenches of World War I to ensure your survival? And I had a lot of people give me a lot of answers that told me that a lot of people know absolutely nothing about World War I. A lot of people thought that trenches were like really spread apart from one another, when in reality trenches were about 300 yards away from each other. A lot of people were telling me, I'll take something like the M14 or the G3 or something like that, simply because it's a full power rifle that can touch out to the long distances that were taking part in World War I. And I'm like, nah. They weren't long distances. They were about, 300 yards or in, like for the most part on that front. That was the distance of the trenches. So definitely not far apart from each other. Definitely not as far apart as some people seem to think. But I had a lot of people in the comments section tell me that they were going to take the AK-47 because it can get muddy or dirty or grody or wet and continue to run absolutely indefinitely. We have seen AK-47 mud tests before that have proven this to be completely wrong. I'm not going to mud test my AK-47 because I don't feel like cleaning it. And why would I bother whenever there's mud tests out there for the AK-47 that have been done on numerous occasions by numerous gun channels that show the AK-47 can simply not stand up to the mud and whatnot that gets into the system. The system is designed to be very tolerant. There's a lot of tolerances with this system, so any sort of dirt and debris and whatnot just kind of shakes out of the system whenever the firearm is cycling and firing and whatnot. So as a result, whenever you don't have things like mud that actually stick into the internals of the system, man, Kevin is just screaming. Why is Kevin screaming so much today? But whenever you don't have something that sticks to the internals of the system, it literally just falls out of the system upon cycling of the firearm, and that can be, incredibly useful if you're in something like a sandy environment. But in the muddy, wet trenches of World War I, you need something that is nice and closed up, so you don't have to worry about any sort of funk getting into the system. A lot of people were telling me that the AR platform is going to just malfunction like crazy, and the AR platform will not work in a muddy environment because of the tight tolerances, whereas the AK-47 would run absolutely indefinitely. Well, in the mud tests that we've seen, the AR-15 dramatically beats the AK-47 in terms of capability and reliability simply because of the AR's tighter tolerances. These tighter tolerances keep the mud out of the system as opposed to the AK-47's very loose tolerances, which are supposed to let things just kind of flow through the system. Well, mud sticks, it doesn't flow. If you have your AR platform here, everything's all nice and tightly closed up, so mud and dirt and crap can't get inside of it. Not only that, but the bolt carrier group, the piston bolt carrier group that is on the AR system, actually has these two little vent holes that come out of the ejection port, and this actually vents out excess gas from the gas system as it cycles through the system, and this will blow any mud and funk out of the ejection port that might be on the rifle. If, whenever the rifle cycles, whenever you fire, the gas goes through the gas system and it exits out of these two holes, and that will clear the way of the ejection system long before the system actually begins to open. That is simply not something that you have with the AK platform. As a matter of fact, the vent system, once the piston passes a certain point on the gas system, the vent system is actually up here on this very much not gas-sealed upper handguard right here. This right here, this gas attachment right here, once the piston passes a certain point on this gas block, the leftover gas, the extra gas vents out of that system, and that doesn't do a damn thing for your ejection port over here on this side of the system. Now, the AK-47, if you do not have your safety engaged, does have this massive opening on the back of the slot right here as well. That is something that is reminiscent from the Garand series of rifles. Like, I got me a Mini 14 right here, and this right here is obviously reminiscent of the M1 Garand system. And this right here also has a large cutout on the back of the receiver where the charging handle is pulled back into, and there's just as far as the charging handle has to go back. Well, this opening right here, much like on the AK, allows dirt and mud and all sorts of funk and whatnot to get into the system. So you have this huge opening on the back of the receiver that just does not do well for keeping all of this crap out of the system. Now, if you close this up with your dust cover / safety, that does a great job at sealing off the system, but you still have this top cover, which is not sealed all that well, especially if you're rocking an AK that is more budget oriented. Not only that, but there's all sorts of little areas all around the magazine, which is very wobbly, all around the trigger assembly area, all around the magazine catch, all around the dust cover system, the little push button strap-on system. I'm not quite sure what I would call that right there. Little push button that actually retains the top cover on here. The actual cutout for the top cover. As a matter of fact, I can look here and I can actually see you guys through the top cover in the bolt carrier group right here, just because the tolerances are not tight enough to be able to keep things out. There's literally daylight that goes through this thing. Sounds like we just had a tree fall in the background. But the tolerances are simply not tight enough to be able to keep things out, and so as a result, no matter what rifle it is, you get something inside of the fire control group, or inside of the firing pin chamber, or inside of the locking lug so the firearm cannot go into battery, you're going to have a malfunction. And that's something that can happen very, very easily with the AK, especially if we're talking about a muddy environment, as opposed to something that can happen with the AR, especially if the dust cover is closed on the AR. This thing is just incredibly good at keeping funk and debris out of its system, especially if you have yourself a good quality AR where the upper and the lower seal very firmly against one another. Something like this AR, I can actually see daylight through the upper and the lower receiver. I can see you guys through this. So this would not be that closed up of a system, and this right here would cause issues in a muddy environment. But if you got yourself a properly built AR, this right here is just a PSA upper on a KP15 lower. They weren't exactly made to fit into one another to, precise, tight tolerance specifications. If you got yourself a good quality AR that was designed that way, then you would have a very good enclosed system that you wouldn't have to worry about any sort of funk getting into. Now, once funk gets into that system, you got to clean it out, but once funk gets into the system of the AK, you have to clean that one out as well. It's much easier to get things into the AK than it is into the AR. So I've got a couple of rounds in this AK, so I may as well send those downrange. One thing I also don't like about the AK system is, in order to operate the system in any way whatsoever, you have to disengage your safety. Even if you want to clear the rifle, you have to disengage your safety so you can pull your bolt back far enough to be able to either chamber around or pull around out of the magazine. Or pull around out of the chamber. That's what I'm trying to say here. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and just test that right now. I got the safety engaged. Yep, that is not coming back far enough to be able to do anything. So in order to make your rifle safe, you have to disengage the safety, and that's just something that I do not like. 7.62 by 39 is absolutely adequate. Oh goodness, come on now, quit being like that. This magazine that I have is a little on the wonky side. It's just a little magazine that I had laying around. YouTube does not like standard capacity mags. So any malfunctions with this AK is entirely based off of this shorty mag that I picked up at a garage sale, I think. There we go. 7.62 by 39 is accurate and capable out to about 400 yards by the average person. It can absolutely be pushed farther than that, but by the average person, about 400 yards or so is about what you would want to expect. And for the trenches of World War I, not only could you shoot from trench to trench in most situations with a cartridge capable out to 400 yards, but whenever you get up close and personal, you got all these people with these bolt-action rifles, and if you had something like an AK, especially if you had something, the full standard capacity magazines or even drum magazines, if they work reliably in your particular AK, you could really be a force to be reckoned with this thing. My goodness. The 7.62 by 39 absolutely tears its way downrange. That's a 123 grain projectile. I think it's traveling at about 23 or 2,500 feet per second, somewhere around that ballpark, and it is just a tremendous amount of force being pushed downrange very, very fast. The AK is absolutely an incredible rifle, especially considering the time period that it had come out. But the people who think that the AK is just absolutely unstoppable in terms of like mud and whatnot, nah, it can very, very much be stopped. As a matter of fact, I had a bad magazine literally stop my AK It can absolutely be stopped in the right circumstances. So don't go thinking just because you have an AK that you have something absolutely invincible, because you simply do not. You get mud or anything inside of the system of literally any rifle and you're going to have issues, whether or not it's this rifle, whether or not it's this rifle, whether or not it's this rifle. As a matter of fact, plenty of mud testing was done by Forgotten Weapons and InRange TV on what the hell is that? Get out of here. On mud testing these bolt action rifles. And as soon as you get mud inside of the locking lugs on one of these rifles, then they stop functioning and you have to get the mud out of those locking lugs so you can get your rifle into battery and send more lead downrange. And that's just the simple fault of the system. You have to be able to get your rifle into battery in order to get, you know, rounds downrange, and you cannot do that if there is mud in the way. The key is to keep mud out of the system. The key is not to keep things so loose toleranted that things just fall out, because sometimes the things that get into the system stick inside of the system, like for example mud. And that's just the nature of the beast. That's the way that the world is. If you have dry sand, then you can just kind of shake your AK out and most of that sand will just kind of fall onto the AK and you can kick the charging handle open and send more rounds downrange. But if you have mud that is not coming out of the AK and you need to like wash it out with some water or something, then guess what? You need to do some remediative action in order to get your AK up and going again. Anyway, I think I've rambled on about this topic long enough. Thanks for watching, folks. I do appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. The description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. You guys go ahead, check that out, and have yourself a fantastic day. My camera's dying. I'm going to have to go charge it, so I'm going to go do that. And I will see you guys on the next episode. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.